They weren't just perfumes or pretty spells. Medieval love potions were often laced with poison, blood, and desperation. And sometimes they worked fatally. Forget rose petals and candlelit dinners. In the Middle Ages, if you wanted someone's love, you didn't write poetry. You went to a healer, or a witch, or worse. This video isn't about fairy tale. It's about blood-soaked packs, secret recipes hidden in Latin grammar, and real deaths caused by what people believed would guarantee love. Because love, back then, wasn't just a feeling. It was power, and when you couldn't earn it, you stole it, bottled it, drugged it into existence. And when that failed, someone usually died. We're about to uncover the horrifying truth behind medieval love potions. What was really in them, who used them, and why even kings were terrified of their effects. This isn't romance. This is obsession, sorcery, and murder, disguised as love. Before Tinder, there were witches, and if you couldn't seduce someone, you could buy their heart in a bottle. In the medieval world, love wasn't just complicated, it was dangerous. Marriage was rarely about affection. It was about alliances, property, and producing heirs. But that didn't stop people, especially women trapped in loveless unions, or men yearning for forbidden affection, from craving something more. And when that craving became unbearable, they turned to what they believed was magic. Enter the local healer, sometimes called a wise woman, an herbalist, or simply a cunning person. They promised more than just potions for headaches. For the right price, they'd brew you a mixture that would make someone fall hopelessly, desperately in love with you. And the demand was massive. Why? Because in a society where romantic choice was nearly non-existent, love had to be manufactured. But the church didn't agree. Clerics preached that true love came from God, not bottles. Any attempt to manipulate desire was considered heretical, even demonic. Still, people persisted. Whispered rumors spread through villages that this neighbor had snared her husband with a charm, or that the noblewoman's sudden affection was unnatural. It was believed that love could be forced, summoned through occult forces, and that belief was powerful enough to drive people to dark, desperate acts. But it wasn't just about romance. In many cases, it was about control. A peasant girl might slip a charm into a rich man's drink, hoping to elevate her status. A jealous wife might try to rekindle her husband's wandering. A nobleman might want to dominate a woman far beneath his rank. And always, the healer or witch would say, "This will work, but there's a price." Because even in folklore, love magic was dangerous. There were always warnings. Use too much, and the potion could backfire. Forget to recite the proper words, and the victim might fall in love with someone else. Fail to offer thanks to the spirits invoked, and madness, illness, or death could follow. These weren't sweet spells, they were contracts with unseen powers, and the more desperate the customer, the more extreme the potion. In some towns, love potion sales were so common that local priests would give sermons specifically warning against them, calling them the work of the devil. But fear couldn't stop a market driven by heartbreak and obsession. So the apothecaries kept mixing, the witches kept whispering, and the buyers, noble and peasant alike, kept coming. Because in the medieval world, love wasn't just sacred, it was terrifying. And people were willing to gamble everything, even their souls, just to feel it. You thought it was roses and wine, trimenstrual blood, powdered bones, and stolen fingernails. If the recipes behind medieval love potions sound romantic, you've been misled. These weren't delicate perfumes or floral brews. These were body fluids, animal parts, poisons, the ingredients of fear, not affection. Let's begin with the most infamous component, menstrual blood. Across medieval Europe, it was believed that a woman's menstrual blood held a unique, almost supernatural power. It was considered both impure and magical, and absolutely perfect for love magic. The belief was that if a woman mixed a few drops of her menstrual blood into a man's wine or food, it would bind his desire to her completely. This wasn't just hearsay, it's written in dozens of folk spellbooks from the 12th to 16th centuries. In southern Italy, one common recipe directed women to soak a piece of bread in their blood and feed it to their lover. In Eastern Europe, women were told to drip blood into soups, stews, or wine. The man, unaware, would be caught in an invisible spell of obsession. But it didn't stop there. Urine, too, was a frequent ingredient, especially if the spell aimed to repel unwanted affections or to cause sexual dysfunction in a rival. In fact, one preserved 14th century German charm involved boiling a man's urine with iron nails and sheep's hair to break his lust for another woman. These weren't metaphors. People did this seriously, desperately, and believed it worked. Then came the more terrifying elements. Graveyard dirt was used to represent death's power, often sprinkled on love charms as a threat. Love me or die. Crushed bones, sometimes stolen from burial sites, were added to elixirs to give them binding force. Hair and fingernails, often stolen from the target, were burned, boiled, or buried alongside magical herbs to summon affection or control. And then there were the herbs, and nearly all of them were toxic. Henbane, belladonna, and mandrake were among the most frequently used. These plants contain psychoactive alkaloids that can cause hallucinations, heart palpitations, dizziness, or death. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, was used in small doses to make a person euphoric. Dazed, the potion giver would say, "See, they're in love now." In reality, they were being poisoned. Henbane, when brewed into wine, caused intense delirium and altered mental states. It was often used in so-called love wines, but just one sip too much, and the potion could cause vomiting, seizures, even death. Mandrake was the most famous. Its roots resemble the human form, and folklore claimed it screamed when pulled from the earth, mixed into potions. It was thought to induce desire, but it could also shut down organs. Romantic, right? And yet, even with the risk of death, people didn't stop, because these ingredients were believed to work. At least sometimes, victims would become obsessed, irrational, emotional, not realizing they'd been drugged into madness. Worse, some of these potions weren't meant to seduce but to eliminate rivals. Women might poison their husbands under the guise of reigniting their love. Men might drug a noble woman into compliance, then blackmail her. Jealous lovers would lace food with deadly herbs to free someone from their marriage. It wasn't love, it was control. And those who made the potions, they lived in constant fear. Apothecaries and folk healers walked a fine line between medicine and witchcraft. If a potion caused harm, or even seemed to, the healer could be blamed. In France, England, and the Holy Roman Empire, dozens of potion sellers were arrested or burned for practicing beneficent poison magic. Inquisition records are filled with interrogations of women accused of seducing married men, causing miscarriages, or killing their husbands, all via love potions. Here's one real case. In 1320, in Toulouse, a woman named Azalina was accused of seducing a merchant with love philters. Under torture, she confessed to boiling his fingernail clippings with goat fat and blood drawn from her thigh. When the man became ill and then obsessed with her, his family accused her of sorcery. She was burned at the stake. Another case from Venice tells of a noblewoman who used mandrake and blood to keep her husband loyal. When he died suddenly, the potion was blamed, and her servants testified against her. She was sentenced to death by drowning. These stories weren't rare, they were rampant, because medieval people believed that love could be created with the right potion, and they feared that obsession, once forced, could never be undone. So they whispered about these recipes, hid them in books, passed them from mother to daughter. And when someone fell violently in love, or mysteriously ill, they wondered, was it magic, or was it murder? When potions made it into the royal court, they didn't just destroy hearts, they toppled entire families. Love potions weren't confined to peasant kitchens or village healers. They made their way into palaces, cathedrals, and courtrooms, and the consequences were often deadly. Take the case of Isabeau of Bavaria, Queen of France in the late 14th century. Rumors swirled that her lovers had used philters, the word for love potions, to seduce her, manipulating royal decisions. French chroniclers accused her of indulging in unnatural passions and whispered that her erratic behavior was the result of magical influence. Though never proven, these accusations planted the seed. Even a queen could fall victim to love magic or be executed for using it, and she wasn't alone. In 15th century England, during the Wars of the Roses, suspicion of sorcery hovered around Elizabeth Wood, wife of King Edward IV. Her swift rise from common widow to queen consort shocked the nobility. Some insisted it was love at first sight, others weren't so romantic. They claimed she'd ensnared the king with sorcery, specifically a love potion made from river robes and moon-brewed wine. These rumors were so widespread that decades later, her son-in-law Henry VII passed laws banning love charms, powders, and philters at court, a direct reflection of how seriously they were taken at the highest levels of power. But not all royal cases were rumors. Some were documented trials, with confessions, torture, and In 1613, in France, the affair of the poisons would become one of the most explosive scandals in royal history. Dozens of nobles, priests, and even members of the king's household were accused of using poison and love magic to manipulate rivals and lovers. The most infamous, Catherine Montvoisin, known as La Voisin, a fortune-teller and midwife, who allegedly sold love potions made from human remains, including powdered infant bones. Her client list included aristocrats and courtesans, some of whom hoped to win the favor of King Louis XIV himself. When her network was uncovered, over 300 people were arrested. Some were executed. Others disappeared into prison forever, and the fear of love potions gripped the court for years. Even in Spain, the Catholic Inquisition handled dozens of trials involving amorous magic. Men and women testified to using herbs, blood, and bone to seduce priests, nobles, and merchants. Some confessions were forced, others were real, but all of them proved one thing: no one, not even royalty, was safe from the power of potions, because love, when manipulated, became a weapon. And when mixed with fear, obsession and superstition. It brought down kings. In the flickering candlelight of medieval Europe, love was never just a feeling. It was a force to be manipulated, feared, and even weaponized. Behind the silk curtains of noble courts and the shadows of peasant huts, people turned to blood, bones, and poison in desperate attempts to control affection. What began as longing often ended in madness, scandal, or death. These weren't harmless love charms. They were tools of domination, revenge, and superstition. From queens accused of enchantment to servants burned for seduction, love potions tore through lives like a silent plague, intoxicating, untraceable, and often fatal. So the next time you hear a story of medieval romance, remember, behind every enchanted glance may have been a potion brewed in blood and secrecy. Because in the medieval world, love didn't conquer all. Sometimes, it